by the requirements team, right? So these were the tasks, name of the resource. Okay, who the resource is. I'm just going to make up a name, John. There's only one business analyst, so John was the resource. Then you have timeline. Okay, how many days do you think? That's your best estimate. Based on these managers' experience, they give the best estimate. Okay, so let's say gathering requirements was 3 weeks. Creating BRD was 1 week. Reviewing BRD with the client, 2 days. So instead of 3 weeks, we'll put everything in days. So 15 days. 5 days. Remember, there are only 5 working days. Reviewing BRD with all stakeholders will be 3 days. Or 5 days, just to get clarity. Okay? So this is how a project plan is created. So all the project manager is doing is getting this information from the managers. Similarly, the design manager will write down all the tasks, which you're going to learn when we go to the design phase, the resource, and the timeline. Okay? And that's the initial project plan. Now, what is the role of a project manager? The project manager will not blindly get all the information and just add it in the project plan. Now, the project manager has to be a technical person, right? If any of the managers have given any unrealistic timeline, they have to go back and negotiate with them. Why? The reality is the VP has given a timeline to the client already. Remember, 12 months plus minus 2 months, or the amount plus minus. Now, if this comes out completely different than what the VP has said, the boss is going to look bad, right? So the project manager's job is to negotiate and try to reduce the timeline as much as possible. And you can only do it if you understand how requirements are done, how the design is done, how the development is done, how the testing is done. Otherwise, they will take you for a ride. A development manager will say to build money transfer, very complicated, it's going to take 4 months. If I don't know how development is done, what am I going to negotiate? Or what am I going to tell them? Okay? So negotiation, making sure the optimum timeline is there for each task. The other thing the project manager has to do if they're experienced is keep a buffer. So let's say all this timeline comes to 10 months, for example. A project manager with experience should keep 2 or 3 months as a buffer without telling anybody in the team, right? So the deadline is set in 10 months, but the client is told it will be 13 months. Why? A lot of things can go wrong, okay? A lot of things can go wrong in a project. So you need some buffer. Now, how much you need depends on the experience of the project manager. They have run these projects, so they know what can go wrong. Okay? So project manager's other role is, once the project starts, gets kicked off, keep a track that these tasks are completing on the timeline. So what they do is, they can add another column called the start date and the end date. Okay, start date and the end date. When did you start and when did you end? Okay, just to keep track that it's around the same timeline. And if it's not being done, then the project manager will either ask question to the resource or ask their manager that why is it taking a long time. Okay. Project manager also is responsible for non-technical tasks like keeping track if somebody wants to go on vacation. Okay, make sure the whole team doesn't go on vacation on the same month. So has to tell them that, you know what, you can't, this is not approved, so that the project can continue, right? Somebody is leaving, making sure from the manager that somebody else can do their tasks while they are on vacation. So that is the team management, okay? If there is any arguments or discussions between different teams, blame game is going on, the project manager is responsible to calm everybody down and make sure the right thing is done in the interest of the project. That's the role of a project manager. So project manager doesn't do anything as far as writing code or building an application, but manages everything that's being done. So at the end, if the project fails, project manager is the first person to lose their job because there's something that they did not do right. So that's why I said it's a thankless job. It's a very, very difficult job. That's why they get paid really well. So you need to have a lot of skills. You need to have very good communication skills. You need to have very good project management skills. You need to be a people's person, and you need to be very, very calm. Very important. Okay, very calm. So that's what a project manager does. So project manager sets up, now there are a lot of meetings that happen during Waterfall SDLC. So one of the meeting is the team meeting, which is usually a weekly meeting where all the project manager does is asks the team if everything is on track. If it's not on track, wants to know why is it not on track and how do we put it back on track. So this is a role of the project manager. So they create this project plan, and this is the deliverable of the planning phase. And again, it is distributed to all the managers. They make sure everybody agrees that all the tasks are there, nothing is missing, and the timeline is right. That's what happens in a planning phase. The start date of the project, and now based on this, the project manager gets an idea how long it will take to finish it, correct? And how much money will we need to, because he knows everybody's salary, okay? And the cost of hardware and whatever is required, software, so adds up everything and comes up with the amount and the cost and cost and the timeline. So if that timeline is around the same as what the VP has told the client, plus minus 2 months, everything is good, right? The client is told that this is the timeline. Obviously with a buffer. Buffer, very, very important. If the timeline is way off, okay, let's say it is way off, then obviously the boss doesn't like it. The boss doesn't want to look like an idiot, right, in front of the client that I said 10 to 12 months, now it's going to take 2 years, right? So then they start discussing how do we bring that timeline in the time period that we've said. Can we get more resources? Obviously it'll increase the cost, which is fine. Usually with companies like Bank of America, money is not the criteria that much, it is the timeline, that we need to finish something in time so that the company can benefit. So then they get more resources and then they reduce the timeline. That's why a project manager needs to negotiate. Okay, if this is how much time it's going to take, then we need to bring more resources and then reduce the time. There's a lot goes on with the project manager, but this is how a project plan looks like. You have each team, their tasks, and you'll know what the design and development and testing tasks are when we get there. And resource names, who are doing it, timeline, start date, end date. And if you want to be more thorough, you can add something like percentage completed of the task. You know, I don't have space, but I'll write it down here. So this is at the end after timeline, start date, end date, and percentage completed.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So we said the business analysis, he will go and speak to the client and get the requirements. Do you think the project manager should be with the?
Doesn't need to.
So he takes the requirements from the business analysis.
Project manager doesn't take the requirements. Project manager doesn't need to take the business. That's the business analyst
So that's
job.
the plan for the requirements, basically.
This is called a project plan. This is the timelines and all the tasks.
Gotcha.
So project manager creates this project plan to find out the total timeline of the project, which team, which resource is doing what, how much is the timeline, and are they doing it on time.
Okay, gotcha.
That's what manages the project. The requirement, project manager has nothing to do with the requirements. That's the responsibility of the business analyst. Project manager's job is, so that's why it's building a software is so complicated process. A big team is required, and everybody has their tasks cut out. So any questions on the planning phase? Every document that is being created is sent for review to all the stakeholders. Everybody reviews it. They don't agree with something, they have set up a meeting and discuss it. And we don't move on to the next phase till everybody is clear and they agree with that document. Same goes for requirements document. If some team doesn't agree or doesn't understand, you don't move on to the next phase. You make sure clarity is there, everybody understands the requirements, everybody understands the functionality, they agree with this, because we don't want any discussions after that. There's no time for that.
I have a
For the
question.
project, yeah.
So BA is getting all the requirements
Yes.
from the client.
Yes.
And when project manager is making this project plan document, he is looking at on the basis of the BRD is making this? No?
He has nothing to do with the BRD.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with the BRD. This has nothing to do with the requirements. These are the tasks that each manager has sent the project manager. He consolidates it and puts it into a document. How did project manager doesn't come up with these tasks? Who comes up with this task? What did I say? Who comes up with these tasks?
BA?
No.
No?
The managers.
The business requirements team manager. Who comes up with the task for the design team?
The
Design
design
manager.
manager.
Yes. Who comes up with the task for the development
The
team?
development manager.
Yes. Testing team tasks. What needs to be done? The testing manager. So testing manager, development manager, design manager, and required manager during the planning phase distribute the tasks in the team, discuss the tasks with the team, that you are responsible for this, and once that is done, sends all this to the project manager. Project manager consolidates all in one project plan so that they know what needs to be done to build the Bank of America web application. Okay, and how much time it will take, who are the resources who are doing it, and is the based on the project, if project manager is non-technical, has no idea, then there is nothing for him to discuss with anyone. Whatever they give, you take it. But if the project manager is technical, they know that this timeline doesn't look right. All they do is they go and ask the manager, why is it taking so much too long? Is there a reason for that? What's the reason for that? And then if they're technical, they can discuss. If they're non-technical, then there's no discussion they can do.
I have a question. So, requirements phase, it should be done. So, this phase, it should be completed?
Sorry.
I think I have the
That's
same.
what I told you, right? That's what I told you, it's done.
I think I have the same question as hers. How is BA and the project manager related to each
They're
other?
not related. Nobody is related to anybody. Everybody is
how will-
independent.
Okay,
How
so
will he manage them?
How will he manage that?
Yeah,
the
that will be-
project manager, I mean, how will he know what is the,
He
you
came
know?
up with the plan.
How will the project manager know what?
What needs to be done?
He
Based
came
on
up-
the project plan.
He came up with, I get it now.
Based on that, so this
So-
is what the requirement teams has done already. This is what,
The
which is,
design
you
team.
can't see,
Mhm.
is the design team tasks that the design team needs to do to design Bank of America application.
Mhm.
These are the tasks which you don't see. We will talk about that when we go to the development phase, that the development team needs to do to build the application, write the code. These are the tasks that the testing or the QA team needs to do to test the software. Who comes up with these tasks?
Project
No.
No, their managers. are-
Development managers of each
Yeah.
team. And what do they do after they come up with these tasks?
Give it to the project manager.
Give it to the project manager.
And then-
And what does the project manager do?
Manage the time and manage.
Put everything in a document called the project plan,
I see.
and then distributes it to all the stakeholders. Please review. This is what you had sent me. Is everything correct? Anything that you disagree with? Okay? Everybody says everything looks good. We are good to go. Move on.
Confirm this is done only after the contract is signed.
Contract is already signed in the initiation phase.
So
Contract.
how do they determine how much cost is going to be? in the
I told you, right?
No, no, this is done only after the contract.
So I
is
told
signed.
you, right? How is the cost determined? The VP gives an estimate based on their experience. It tells it's an estimate.
So it's just an estimate.
It's an estimate. How can you give an
So it can go wrong.
before it can go wrong? That's what I just told you. It can go wrong. It can go completely
Yes.
wrong.
Even
But
the time.
based on a person who has 25 years of experience, has done 10 projects like this, it's
Last
difficult
month.
that they will go wrong.
Comes like
They don't deserve to be the VP if they go completely wrong. If they say 12 months and it is 3 years, it will be. So that's why it's called an estimate.
Yes,
That
yeah.
this is the best estimate based on our discussions. What did I tell you? After the planning phase, we will tell you the exact timeline and the exact amount. How does he come up with the cost? They know the salaries of each employee. If it's a full-time employee or a contractor, hourly rate. So how much, this is the timeline, plus 3 months buffer, okay? Could be 4 months depending on the project. How much will we be paying all the resources? What will be the cost of all the hardware and the software? Cost management, right? Puts everything together and gives the timeline. And with this disclaimer that if something goes wrong, okay, risks, these are the risks, then it can change. But as of now, this is the final requirement and this is the timeline. And it always comes with the risks. Biggest risk is the whole team quits on one day. What can a project manager do? It's beyond project manager's control. Then we discussed that at that time. Right? So there are always risks involved.
I think sometimes in the project they will, fire someone or say like you don't have money, you
So
can.
that's why the buffer is. See,
Yeah.
that's a different discussion altogether. They will fire a person if they don't perform,
Mhm.
or their existence, they're not a team player, they are stalling the project, or the budget is not there.
Yeah.
So that's
So
what
then
happens.
that time
Yeah.
comes out.
Project plan is where all the tasks that needs to be done by each team, the name of the person who's doing it, the timeline, and then start date, end date, when did you start, when did you end,
And the person-
and while you're doing it, what percentage do you think is completed? So it's a good way for project manager to keep track on a weekly basis. If you were 25% done, you can't be 5% the next week, right? So the progress, and
Great.
if things are not being estimated, then the project manager goes and talks to the developer manager that your estimates were very wrong. So you need to do something in your team to catch up. That's how the project is run. Any questions? You need to have clarity about everything before
So
you move
basically,
on.
the BA is meeting with the managers, and
No, BA is meeting with the client and then reviewing the document with everybody, all stakeholders, every team member of the IT
Team
team.
manager basically, yeah.
Manager, every team member includes the manager
Yep.
to review the requirements so that every individual is clear what the requirement is, clarity about each functionality, and then they sign off so that they cannot say that we don't know. Right? So anything that is confusing you, you should ask that question. Pretty straightforward thing, right? You
The
get the
planning,
task.
this is the in planning phase, right?
Yeah, it's planning phase.
So initiation is like when you are
When he's meeting.
Initiation is the first handshake between the
handshake
client
with the client.
and the boss of the IT team. The
Yes.
client tells them, this is a business reason, we need to build this software. This is what we want, high level. The VP understands, or the boss understands what they need to be built. Says, based on my experience, this is, I
This
think
is-
the timeline and the cost is, but this is an estimate, we'll give you everything after the planning phase.
And then the requirements phase,
Yeah.
the BA tells everybody
Mhm.
what needs to be done
In detail,
in detail.
in minute details.
Like, yeah, and then
First creates the BRD,
yeah,
sends it for review, and then reviews it with them.
yeah, and
Line
then
by
this
line,
is the planning
each line.
phase. This is the
This is the
planning.
planning phase.
Yes.
You cannot plan without requirements. You cannot plan without the tasks. If you don't know what needs to be built, you can't plan. Okay? So, if you don't have any questions, we can move forward. Otherwise, I can can answer those. I'll send you all the screens. And I'll show you a real project plan. This is just a rough estimate for you to know. So BRD, we'll be working on a BRD. We'll see all those documents. This is just a high level understanding of how you should understand what it takes to build a software. What team? So what are the team members we've discussed so far? We've talked about the requirements manager. We've talked about the business analyst. We've talked about the project manager and the VP or the CTO of the company. Okay, now design phase, the word design, what does design mean?
Make the
Picture.
Charts.
make the
So
structure.
design in
How it's gonna
IT
look.
is done before development. So let's understand the meaning of each thing. Initiation, you are clear what it means. Requirements phase, what it means.
Planning.
Planning phase. So far there is no software, right? All we have is a document, 2 documents. So what was the deliverable of requirements phase? BRD, business requirement document. What was the deliverable of the planning phase? Project plan. Now in design phase, a lot of things are happening. Okay, so there's a lot of information, so I'm going to go really slow. All right. So there is a person called the architect. Now just to be clear, an architect again is a person with 15-20 years of IT experience, starts as a developer and becomes an architect. Architect does not report to the design manager. Architect reports directly to the CTO or the VP of the company. Most technical person in the team. Now, are you familiar with what an architect does to build a house? What is the role of an architect in building a house?
Design.
Architect designs the structure of the house, how many square footage the house will be built on, what material will be used, correct? The whole design of the house, how, what will be the length and the breadth of each room, how many total rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms. This is what an architect of a house designs, right? Pretty much the whole blueprint of the house, which has rooms, the material to be used. That's what an architect. So an architect in the IT industry does something similar. Okay? So the architect takes very important decisions about the project. Now the architect doesn't take a decision sitting alone in his room. Architect takes all these decisions after discussion with the development team or the development manager mainly. Okay? So all these decisions are not taken by the architect by themselves, but with discussion with the development manager and the developers. So architect decides architect is the most experienced person, right? 20-25 years in the IT industry, has done development, so understands development very well. So what decisions do we need to take when we are building a software? So the most important decision is what programming language should we use? Okay? But before I go into all that, I just want to explain you a typical software. Okay? What does a software consist of? Okay? And there are some terms that you should know. So let's say this is Amazon screen. Okay? The drawing is not that good, so you have to. This is called the front end. What is a front end? Front end is anything that you see with your eyes. So when you go to Amazon.com, right? You see the screens and you work through those screens. That is called the front end. Okay? Then there is something called a database. We will go into detail when we learn SQL. Okay? For now, what is a database? Database is where the data is stored. What data are we talking about? So if you go to Amazon.com, you see all this information. You see all these things. When you search for electronics, for cameras, there's a long list of cameras. You search for laptops, there's a long, all this is data, right? how do you think the data is coming on this website? It is all stored in a database. Okay? Database is also called backend. Why is it called backend? Because it's at the back and you don't see it. When you're using Amazon, you don't see the database of Amazon. It's somewhere where Amazon has their servers. Okay? So front end is clear. Okay? Back end is clear. What is the database? Database is where all this data is stored. Okay? And we'll learn how the data is stored when we learn SQL. Now, what connects the front end to the back end? So how is information going from the front end to the back end and from the back end to the front end? What do you think makes the front end talk to the back end?
With the programming language?
Programming language. This is the middle layer. Any questions on this? This is a typical software. Software could be more complicated than this, but this is like a easy explanation. Front end is what you see when you're using an application. Database, back end is where all the data is stored. And programming language sends the data from the front end to the back end and picks up the data from the back end to the, displays it in the front end. Okay, so this is how a typical software works. Now, what are the decisions that the architect takes? The architect takes, again, discussions not by themselves, but with discussion with the development team. What programming language or languages should we use to build this? There are so many programming languages. How do we decide which programming language or languages or technology we should use? That's where the architect comes in. That this programming language and this technology suits this kind of application, so let's build that. So, programming language. Or languages. Be Java, be JavaScript. Web services. Okay, we'll learn about what web services is. So, what is Java? Java is a programming language. What is JavaScript? JavaScript is a scripting language. Java and JavaScript have nothing in common. The similarity between Java and JavaScript is the same similarity between car and carpet. Car and carpet start with car. So, right? So same similarity that train and training has. Train and training only have the word train. So similarly, Java and JavaScript have nothing in common. Okay? C++, so these are the programming languages, and web services is a technology, which we will learn in this class. So these decisions are taken by the architect. The other decision the architect takes along with the development manager, what database should we use? So there is another person called a DBA. We'll talk about that when we get to the development phase. So what database should we use? Now there are many databases in the market. Okay, the most popular ones are Oracle and SQL Server. So which database should we use? That decision is taken by the architect. Okay. Also decisions like if any third-party tool is required. What is a third-party tool? Now, if you've noticed, when you're making payments using eBay or Amazon, when you're making the payment using your credit card, your debit card, or PayPal, if you watch carefully, it says powered by some company. That software is powered by some company, XYZ company. So that particular software that you use while using Amazon is not built by Amazon. That is a third party. Okay? So now if we are building Bank of America, okay, might not be a very good example. So let's say, for example, we are building Amazon. Now, should we spend the time and money to build the payment system, which will cost $1 million, or a system already exists, can we just buy it and integrate it with our software? It'll be cheaper. Maybe we'll pay $150,000 instead of building it. So why should we spend time and money building something which is already available? We can just take it, buy it, and integrate it with the software. Those are called third-party tools or third-party software. If something is already built and available, so all this knowledge the architect has, because the most technical person, what is the latest technology in the industry, what will suit this software or application, that will make it better. Okay, so third party. Also creates the same blueprint that an architect of a house creates. How many? So this is pretty much the raw material for building a software. Also comes up with a document called the framework. Now this is not important for you as a QA. You really don't even need to look at it. It's more for development, but you should know. What is a framework of a software? Just what I explained, right? So what programming language will we build the front end in? Okay, so let's say we build front end with Java script. What database are we going to use? We are going to use SQL Server, let's say. Okay, what other programming languages do we need to use? Because we will need SQL. Okay, we will need Java here. We will also need to build web services. So pretty much a diagram of this, a visual. A framework diagram is a visual of all that we just talked. A visual. More for the development team. Okay. So what is the role of the architect? The architect role is decide what programming language we should use, what database we should use, what third party, what framework, and what operating system. What is an operating system? Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac. What operating system should we build our application on? Okay? Now, so everybody is clear what an operating system is? Windows is an operating system. Unix,
Mac,
Linux, we learned Unix in this class is an operating system. Mac is an operating system. Now, very, very important decision, but I'm putting it at the last. So this is no sequence. Everything is important. I'm just numbering it. Now, just to give you an idea. So in olden days is as old as 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Companies had, so Naomi, I was able to connect.
You were?
Yeah, training at what?
Do you have a fan?
Yeah. You need it? You need the fan? That's fine. So now in 10, 12 years ago, or before that, company, and you must have noticed it if you've ever gone to an IT company, they had big servers. They had a server room. Okay? What is a server? Okay? For now, think of a server as a powerful laptop or a desktop. What do I mean by a powerful laptop or a desktop? With very fast configuration, with a lot of RAM. So right now you have 6 GB RAMs, maybe 360 GB RAM or 500 GB RAM, right? So many times. Space, you have either 500 GB or 1 terabyte, 100 terabytes. A huge, powerful laptop is a server. Okay, for now that's what it is. So companies had these servers where they built the application on, okay? And they called it application server. The term we use is application server. So what is an application server? Application server is where all the code resides. The logic, programming language is the logic of the application, right? So it all resides on the application server. Now, it's very important to understand this. In olden days, we had physical servers, right? So companies paid a lot of money, hired people to manage those servers, and all the code was actually built on a server. So developers used to connect and build it on. So those days are gone. Now we have something called, I think we don't need the fan. It's cold.
It's cold?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do we have nowadays? Have you heard the term cloud?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you think a cloud is?
Server.
Save everything.
Cloud is a server
Yeah.
which you cannot see,
Yeah.
but you can use. So a physical server you can see, it is somewhere in this room. It's not there, I'm just making it up. So let's say a physical server is something that you can see, you can access, and it is very high maintenance, they are very expensive. Not just the hardware is expensive, but you have to hire people to maintain those servers. That's extra expense. So that all is outdated now. Companies use cloud. What is a cloud? Now, before I tell you this, do you guys know who's the richest man in the world? Or in the US? I'm not sure. He's in the world also. Who do you think is the richest man? Bill Gates is not the richest man. He was the richest man till 2017. There is somebody else, you can Google it later.
Carnegie?
Who do you think is the richest man in the US and in the world?
It's
Not
people
Bill,
maybe.
huh? Mark Zuckerberg is nowhere
Yeah.
near the top.
What's his name?
Yeah.
The Tesla wala jo
Yes.
uska naam hai.
Google it, you'll know.
So the one the Tesla do made.
No, Tesla is nowhere near. The owner of Amazon. And he's way ahead of Bill Gates. Doesn't look like Bill Gates will catch up with him in the next few years, or anybody will. Why do you think the owner of Amazon is the richest man in the world? If you're saying because of the Amazon website, no, that is only 25% of his income. Amazon is huge. Amazon is all over the world. Everybody uses Amazon, that's why stores are.
Yeah,
But that is
closely.
only 25% of his income, or 30%. Why do you think he's the richest man? Because every IT company in the world is using Amazon Cloud to build their software. There is Microsoft Cloud, there is Google Cloud, but it is nowhere near Amazon Cloud and Amazon Web Services. So these web services and Amazon, this is where he's making money. Every company, when they build softwares nowadays, they use Amazon Cloud, or it's called AWS, Amazon Web Services. Okay? This is a technology which we will learn in this class. So that's why he's become the richest man. You can Google it. Let's Google it. I don't know if I'm correct or not. Let's Google it.
You are correct.
The richest man. I don't know if he's the world richest man.
You made up. IT company uses the.
Jeff Bezos. He's the richest man.
Oh, it changed.
In 2018 he became, or end of 2017. His name is Jeff Bezos. He's the CEO of Amazon. He pretty much owns the Amazon. So the two reasons why he's the richest is because every IT company is using Amazon Web Services now, and whoever is not using are restructuring their software to use it. If they've not used it, they're going towards it. So Amazon Cloud, Amazon Web Services, and then obviously the Amazon website where people are buying stuff. Anyways, so takes a decision that we will use Amazon Web Services and Amazon Cloud. So this decision has become very easy now. You'll use. Now Amazon Cloud is very cheap. What do you mean? How do you use Amazon Cloud? So you open an account in Amazon, right? Company, and then you get access to a server. So developers can use their laptops, go to a URL, and use a login password and has access to a server. The best part of that is, so let's say we are using that at Library of Congress. There was 4 days off, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There was a long weekend, or Thanksgiving is coming. So you can turn off the servers, bring them down, because you pay hourly. It's a very cheap. It's not expensive at all. It's very, very cheap to use. But the good thing is, if you don't need to use it for 4 days, you can bring it down. Because there's no one environment. We learn there are more environments or more servers you use, but you can bring it down also, so that there's no charge When you need it, you can bring it up again. Put it up. So what application server should we use? What technology should we use? That's the other decision. So these are the decisions that an architect takes in consultation with the development manager and the development team. So that is one of the roles of the architect. Now the other role of the architect is, since this person is the most technical person, if the development team ever have a question when they're writing code or they get stuck building an application, they can always get advice from the architect. Architect can always guide them how to write the code, how to do things. So that's the role of an architect. So design phase has a lot of things, so that's why we'll go slow. So any questions on what an architect does and what is the role of the architect? Okay, so there's a lot going on in the design phase.
It's a heavy one.
This is only one thing, there are many more things. So the next thing is, we're still in the design phase. We have a person called UI, or front end designer. Okay. UI stands for user interface, another term for front end. User interface. Okay. So what does a UI designer? Again, a very, very important part to build a software. A UI designer or a front-end designer is the artist of the IT team. Okay, what do artists do? Artists create paintings and pictures, right? So a UI or a front-end designer designs the screen of the application. Okay, so before a software is built, you first have the requirements document. Okay, from the requirements document, the designers come up with screens. Okay, based on the requirement functionality, how should the first screen of Bank of America look like? They start from a whiteboard and they use tools after that. There are many tools available. Visio is one. Visio is one that is very popular nowadays. Some designers even use Excel. And there are many tools in the market. Every day there's a new tool that comes out. So what do the UI or the front-end designers do? They come up with screens. Obviously, this is more than one person. One person cannot design Bank of America. You need at least 2 or 3 people. So they will come up with the UI screen. So screen 1, screen 2. How will the screen look like? So these screens. If you're building Bank of America, this is what I mean by screen. This is the first screen of Bank of America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you put your online ID and password and you click on sign on, you get to the next screen. Then you go click on your account, you see the details, that's the next screen. So all these screens, they come up with a team. They have 3 or 4 UI designers, 2 or 3 depending on the project, and they come up with all these screens based on the requirements document. Okay?
What's the difference between a screen and a page?
No, same thing. Page comes up with pages or screens. There are many terms. So let's talk about good thing you brought that up. So screen, page, wireframe, prototype. So companies use these terms for these screens. Some companies, they will call them pages, some companies will call them screens, some companies call them wireframe, some companies call it prototype. Prototype.
So these are all for the screen, the front end.
Front end. Obviously, it's still not a working software. It is just
Yeah.
a screen. So they design, decide the colors, how will it be a text box, will it be a drop down, all those decisions are taken. So online ID and password will be a text box, sign in will be a button, and then there'll be links for all the accounts. So the whole design of the UI is done by the UI or the front-end designer. UI stands for user interface. Another term, GUI. It's called graphical user interface. Another term, same meaning. So UI or front-end designer or GUI, graphical user interface, comes up with all these screens. So for example, there's an application for which you will write test cases. So it's a very small application, so they come up with these screens before the application is built. Okay, so that's what a, and when I give you an overview of the project that I'm working at Library of Congress, I'll show you actual prototypes that we have, or wireframes or this, so that you get an idea of how they look. I guess either you guys are understanding everything or you guys are not understanding anything. That's why there's no
Aisha has a
questions.
question.
I don't have a question.
Can I ask you a
What
question?
does it have to
Yeah,
do?
one
with
at a
it?
time.
Yes.
So one question at a time. Yeah, tell me.
What does this SDLC have to do with QA job?
Yes, very good question. If you have to test a software and I give you a software to test, how will you test it? So I tell you, I built an application, please test it. Can you test it? No, I'm asking her a question. What does SDLC have to do with it? How will you test a software? You know,
Planning.
how will you test a software? Can you test a software without reviewing the requirement document?
No.
You have to know.
Okay. Can you test a
Basic thing.
software without looking at the design, the UI screens? No. So that's what SDLC has to do with.
And the
testing.
language is involved.
Yeah. So that's what SDLC has to do with. You will not be able to test if you don't understand SDLC. You'll not be able to do any job in the IT industry if you don't understand SDLC. Every job, whether you're a software tester or a business analyst, you need to understand SDLC. How will you know what question to ask which person if you don't understand SDLC? If you don't know what a business analyst is, who are you going to ask questions about the requirements? If you don't understand anything in the screens, who are you going to ask the question if you don't know who the front-end designer is?
As a tester, it's good to know that what are the roles
And
of
if you
other
don't
people.
know the roles and responsibility, and you don't know the process of building software, if somebody gives you a software which you have no clue, how will you test it if you don't know all this?
That makes sense.
Yeah. And if you wait a little longer, it will make more sense when we get to the testing phase. Everything will fall in place. So any questions on UI mockups? So these are also called another term, UI mockups. So many terms for these UI front-end designer creates these screens. Screen, page, page is not used that much. I've never seen it used, but you can use it.
Yeah.
Screens is very common, wireframe is very common, prototype is very common, UI mockups. These are mockups. So this is not a working software. It is just the screens of the whole workflow of the software, every screen. that you can think of right now with the requirements. Okay? So the first deliverable of the design phase is these UI mockups. Okay? How they are built is the UI designers, they start from a whiteboard. They start designing it on a whiteboard. Once they kind of finalize it, then they use tools like Visio to build these so that they look exactly like how they look in the application, but obviously they're not working software. It's a dead software, just the pictures. So that's what this is done.
You know the name of the tools?
I can look it up. I've not been a UI designer. I have seen there are actually many tools. Visio is what we are using currently,
Microsoft Visio.
Microsoft Visio. But there are 10 tools, different tools you can use. I don't know the names right now. I can look it up. Now, the next thing is, we'll not go into too much detail because if I explain it to you, it will make no sense till we do database and SQL. Okay? So we have somebody called the system. Okay, let's go back. So first deliverable, everybody is clear. Now the second deliverable is FRD, functional requirement document. Now you know what BRD is, okay? Who creates this document? Person called system analyst. Creates FRD. So one role is UI designer, okay? Then you have system analyst. What is an FRD? So everybody's clear what a BRD is. It's a business requirement document. Why is it called a business requirement document? Because it is given by the client, which is the business. So we use, for the client, we use another term called business. Okay? So the client has given those requirements, right? That's why it's called business requirement document. Functional requirement documents are created, it's again a document that is created based on the BRD. So the system analyst sets up meetings with the business analyst to discuss. Now, what is the difference between a BRD and an FRD? I'll give you simple examples, okay? So, a requirement document will say that, I'll give you 2-3 examples. The requirement document say, user will open a browser, enter the Bank of America URL, and the system will navigate them to the Bank of America website. User will enter correct username, correct password, click on sign on, the system will securely log them in and then navigate them to the account screen. This is how the BRD is written. Now FRD is written how the application will work, okay, with all the scenarios they can think of. Now, who's the audience? So let me, before we go into this, who do you think is the audience for all these documents that we are creating so far? For which team are we creating all this? Development team, right? Who is going to use all these documents? Development team. Development team needs the BRD to know what to build. Development team needs the UI design to know how the screens will be designed. Now, a good example of FRD is functionally. Business tells you how the application should work, okay, right? FRD tells you every possible scenario. It actually helps you write your test cases. So FRD will be a user, if they enter incorrect login or incorrect password, a combination of incorrect login or incorrect password, they should not be allowed to log in. If the user forgets their password, they can send a request for the password to be changed. Okay, so this comes as a functional requirement. FRD is a functional requirement. So with login, the BRD will only tell you user logs in and get you the accounts. but what all has to be built along with it. Incorrect login should not allow. Correct?
Yes.
If you forgot your password, then you should be able to change your password. Okay, what are the security things you need to do? Another example, requirement document will say a user should be, account holder should be able to transfer funds in Bank of America, outside the Bank of America, internationally. More details like this is the maximum amount that can be transferred. These are the countries where the money cannot be transferred. Okay. Any other business rules related to the accounts. So whatever the developer needs to build, the system analyst needs to write it in the FRD. So it's a functional requirement. How will the application function? Okay. More details, if you want to understand it easily, more details around a functionality. So the FRD takes a functionality from the BRD, okay, and breaks it down into more detail. Okay. So for example, an FRD will say a user can transfer funds from Bank of America, from any of their checking accounts to any of their saving accounts and vice versa, to somebody else's checking or savings account in Bank of America, to their own account in PNC Bank, to somebody else's account in PNC Bank, to their own account internationally, to somebody else's account. This is the maximum amount that can be transferred. Okay? And if you transfer funds, how do you cancel them? Okay? So more details about a business requirement. Business requirements are high level functionalities. Okay? FRD is detailed. Okay? So that when a developer is writing code, they know what all scenarios they need to cover. Okay? More details. Another example. BRD will say a user should be able to use bill pay to pay the following bills. Okay? FRD will give specific names of which bills and which companies that Bank of America can work with. More details. So an easy way to understand is a client will say, I want this. Okay? That goes in BRD. How is that thing that the client wants, how will that get implemented into the software is the FRD. Okay? Client gives a requirement that I want something like this. But how will that be implemented into the real software is FRD. Okay? More details, every possible scenario that can be. Okay? FRD will give things like if there is a screen. Okay, BRD never talks about, I'll give you a very good example and I think it will be very clear after that. Let's say we are on that request a card screen. Okay, the screen that we worked on yesterday. So let's say the business requirement is a user should be able to fill in the request a card screen and should be able to receive a discount card. That is your BRD, one line. FRD will say that these are the fields that the user needs to fill in. First name, last name, address. These are the required fields. These are the drop downs. Okay? BRD doesn't talk about drop downs, text boxes, links.
Details.
The FRD will talk about drop boxes, links,
Detail,
radio
broken.
buttons, all that detail. See the difference?
Broken down detail.
Broken down details. That's what an FRD is. So the development team will review the requirements to understand high level, and then they will review the FRD to see how it is broken down functionally. Yeah. And so these are the two deliverables: UI, mockups or wireframes, and FRD. Who creates the FRD? System analyst. Who creates the UI mockups, prototypes?
User interface.
UI or the front-end designer. UI stands for user interface. Okay. Now there are two more things which we will not go into detail because it will not make any sense right now till you understand databases. Okay? So one thing is called the mapping document. We will revisit this when we do databases and SQL. Mapping document and database design document. And when we learn this, you will understand why it doesn't make sense to explain them now. You need to understand how database works before you can know what a mapping document is. Who creates this? This is created by Database Designer. And this is created again by the system analyst. So 4 deliverables from the design phase. What are those? UI,
Mockups,
mockups,
FRD,
FRD,
mapping,
mapping document,
database design documents.
These two we will cover in detail. We will come and revisit them when we do database. Okay? Any questions? If there's nothing to ask, I'm not explaining anything. So we will revisit this when we do database. Okay. If it's too much information, we can take a break. Or you want me to continue? Tell me. If you guys are falling asleep, we'll take a break for 2 minutes.
And for test, should they know all?
See, we'll go to the testing phase, then I'll answer your question. You might not need all, but you will need most of them. But you need to know about all of them. That's the answer. There's nothing you will learn. I will not even spend 1 second teaching you anything that you will not need for software testing, either for your interview or for your job. There's not even one word I will say that you will not need. That's how I'll put it. Why should I teach you something that you don't need for your interview or for your job? Just to pass time? No. Everything that you're learning, everything you will need. Each and everything. That's why I said, this is what I've told people before. This is an easy class if you study along with it. It is a piece of cake. It's not at all hard. The day you fall behind, there is so much information that you will get in the 4 months that you'll be overwhelmed if you don't study along the way. If you study along the way and study, all you need is spend 10 hours. So you need to plan your schedule where you have 10 hours during this training for the week. When we are doing Selenium, WebDriver and SQL, you'll need 12 to 15 hours. But other than that, 10 hours is more than enough. Do your assignments, listen to the recording, make your own notes. That's all you need to do. And ask questions. Anything you are not crystal clear about, everything should be very clear. You have even one doubt, you should ask. Otherwise, you will not learn it. Now, I want to have like a 10-minute question answer session after every topic okay? I will tell you the questions I'm going to ask you. And then I will ask you those questions. It can't be easier than that, right? So that you know what you need to study. So, one question I'm going to ask you after we are done with this is, what are the deliverables of each phase? That's one question. The other question is, role and responsibility of the team members. What does a system analyst do? What does a business analyst do? What does a project manager do? Those kind of questions. Okay. So, any questions on design phase? No? You can ask next week also, but if there's no question, we'll move forward. So, development phase, we will cover, actually I'll have to do it twice because
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
Who actually distributes the task to the different developers.
Who's gonna answer this question?
Eh, Project manager.
Wrong.
What was the question? I missed it.
Who distributes the development tasks to the developer?
Oh, the business analyst?
Wrong.
Development manager.
Yes.
You know the answer. Why you ask that?
I won't confirm.
Yeah. So
No,
who?
now you-
I didn't
Why
get
will
it.
a business analyst assign tasks to a developer?
Development manager.
Who is
No,
that?
so the design manager does all this other work and he hands it over to the development manager and then he distributes.
No. So all these documents, when these are created.
I'm a little confused about the design manager and the development
So
manager.
design manager manages the design team and the development manager manages the development team. So there is no work yet started in the development phase.
Okay.
They are reviewing these documents. They cannot start development till the design phase is over. Because they don't know how the screens will look like. They don't have the FRD. They don't have the mapping document or the database design.
That's only in waterfall.
Only in waterfall. We are talking about waterfall, right?
Yeah.
So who is giving the thing? I'm not clear.
Development manager
Huh?
is distributing the tasks
development.
for the
Development
Like the
manager.
department manager.
Project manager doesn't distribute any tasks. Project manager manages the project.
क्वेश्चन करने चाहिए सभी थोड़ा clear है.
Now, what happens in the what are the documents so far? We talked about the deliverable of requirements phase is BRD. Deliverable of planning phase is project plan. Deliverables from design phase is UI markups or wireframes and FRD that you know. But you should know there is a mapping document and database design. What is included in it, you don't need to know because we haven't discussed it. But you should know the name. Database design, mapping document, FRD, and UI markups. So there is another deliverable. You can miss that if you want. You really don't need it as a QA, but it's good to know the framework diagram that the architect created. Okay? If you remember it, good. If you don't remember it, that's fine also. But
What
that's
it is?
We call
the
it
framework diagram that the architect creates.
Oh, we call
In
it
design, in
design
design
phase.
phase.
we can call it design document also.
These are all design documents. All of these are design documents. There are 4 or 5 of them.
UI mockup, FRD, mapping.
Document,
document,
database design
database
document,
design.
and the architect had created the framework diagram. So the architect, remember I told you there's a framework diagram. It has the UI, what programming language for the UI, what database, what programming languages to send data from.
What is framework?
Framework is just a diagram. Okay, it's a visual that shows what programming language will be used to build the UI. What database are we going to use, and what language are we going to use for the logic? What programming languages are we?
But then what's the difference between framework and the mockup?
It's north and south, east and west difference.
Mockup is also like a mockup diagram. It's just
Of 100 mockup will be 100 screens. Framework will be 1 screen, or 200 screens, or 300 screens, depending on the application. The difference is, I think she did not understand. So let me explain it one more time. So Bank of America, how many screen approximately do you think? Just approximate number. Bank of America would have. You've used Bank of America?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Come up with any number approximately if you use Bank of America.
100.
You think about 100?
Yep.
Okay.
More.
So these are the UI mockup screens.
Pages.
Okay, or prototype or wireframes.
Mhm.
Okay, which the UI designer creates. The architect creates a diagram, 1 page, which tells what programming language will be used to build the front end. What database are we going to use? And what programming language will have the logic to
To
talk between front end and the
communicate.
back end? And if any third party tool is being used. 1 diagram. So that's the difference. development phase. Now, I think we should take a break.
Yes.
We should break up because there's a lot of information in the development phase. Not too much information, but a little technical information. So it's good to take a break right now. The planning phase.
Project plan?
Let him
Oh,
answer.
sorry,
Project
sorry.
plan.
Oh, you are
Project
going
plan.
like this?
Yeah, I'm going like this.
Oh, sorry.
Project plan, okay.
You can take my turn.
Who creates the project plan?
Project,
Let him answer.
project manager.
Project manager, okay. What is the role of a business analyst? What do you think is the role?
He need to make a plan, and also distribute the some tasks to.
Business analyst. What is the role of a business? Yes.
Gather all the information
Gather all the information
from the
Everything.
client.
from the client to
Yeah.
create the business requirement document. Okay. What is the role of a project manager?
He have to able to manage all of his employees, like not employees means like
All the team members.
yeah, all the team members, and make sure that they are doing their own tasks and
Okay.
also distribute their
So first, he doesn't distribute the tasks.
He creates.
Okay, what is the document that the project manager creates? Let him answer.
planning.
Yes. What is the document called? Okay, you tell me.
I'm sorry, what is the question?
What document does the project manager create?
Planning document? Project.
It is a planning document. It's called project plan.
Project plan.
Test
Got-
plan document.
Yeah, it is a planning document. It's called project plan. See, there are a lot of terms that you will learn. It will take time. That is why it is important.
Oh, I have.
So one more thing is, it's very important to be very organized, okay? So all the information I will send you in the emails that we have sent. So we'll test it today. I will send a test email so you can all see that you've received that email from me. The other thing is, whatever documents, so the QA documents, you've created a QA folder. Anything else that I give you during the training, put everything in one folder so that there is only one location that you are going to. Okay, next question.
Go like this.
What are the deliverables from the design phase? Zabi?
FRD.
FRD, very good.
Mhm.
What else?
Oh, mock-up
Mockups, very good.
and framework.
Diagram, very good.
And there was one more.
Database design.
Mapping.
Mapping, okay, very good. Very
I
good.
should. Give me a minute.
Okay, ma'am.
So Aisha, question for you. What is the difference between a BRD and an FRD?
The BRD is basically he gets the
Oh, you want me to
information,
put- okay.
like a line from the client, and then he basically transfers it to FRD, so he can go deep and
Detail.
Detail.
Who creates the
Details.
BRD and who creates the FRD? Aisha, question for you.
yeah.
That's okay.
I was thinking. I think the BRD creates the FRD.
Yeah, BRD is used to create the FRD, but
Yeah.
the role, which person
Who
in the
creates
team, who in the IT team creates the BRD?
The developers. Huh?
Business analyst?
Business analyst. Business
BRD.
analyst. Business analyst.
Okay.
Okay. Who creates the FRD?
System.
System analyst.
Okay, very good. Okay. Seema, what happens in the initiation phase?
That client and IT team manager
Yeah.
discuss about what is requirement of client.
Okay, very good. That's good. How do you pronounce your name? Daniel? I got it right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, what does a sign off mean? When these documents, let him answer. What is the meaning of a sign off?
She knows everything.
It's mean when
everything is
It's a
clear.
small thing.
Everybody know what we need to do. All requirements is used as we sign off to go on, move on by doing
Right, so sign off is when
project.
everybody in the IT team, who's everybody? The requirements manager and the business analysts, the design manager and the system analyst, database designer, UI designer, when they review the requirements or all the other documents. So it's not just the BRD that is signed off, okay? BRD is signed off, the UI mockups are signed off, the FRD has to be signed off. So sign off does not really mean that you sign anywhere on a document. It is just an
Like
email
you agreed.
agreement
Agreement.
that we have reviewed it. My team, we as in each manager has to say, my team has reviewed it. We are very clear and we agree with it.
Comes a C drive.
Yes. So there are
C
typically
drive or desktop?
who
So
does
Wait,
testing
in
team
desktop.
should agree with
yes,
designer.
yes. Testing team has to review. So all these documents. So one thing maybe I missed. So like we have the BRD review.
कहाँ पे करना
Okay,
है?
we have a review of UI mockups. All the stakeholders review. Now, let me explain you how reviews
this
happen. So
इसी में
before
करना
we
है
go
ना?
forward, UI mockups are reviewed the same way the BRD is
तो मैं
reviewed.
कर रही थी ना वो
The FRD is reviewed the same way the BRD is reviewed. Everybody gets a chance to review them for a week.
Let me know.
Okay, every
अच्छा,
team member, and then they have a review meeting.
तुम ये डेस्कटॉप
If
में
they have any
फोल्डर बनाओ
questions.
वो फोल्डर
Now,
में डालो
every
सब
company is different, okay? So some companies, they ask you to review the documents on their own, and if you have specific questions, you can ask the concerned person, okay? Other companies have a review meetings, okay? Now, all these documents, where are they located, okay? You need to understand. So BRD is created, FRD is created, UI mockups are created. Where do you store these documents? All these documents are stored in a repository, a central repository. Now there are many repositories available in the IT. Every company uses different. So earlier, there's something called a shared drive. What is a shared drive? You all have access to your C drive.
Yes.
Okay, but I cannot access your C drive. I cannot, right? You cannot access my C drive. So what is a shared drive? A shared drive is a drive in the network of a company which everybody can access. The whole team. Everybody means the whole IT team can access. So let's say the name of the drive is J drive. So everyone will have access to that J drive, and under that drive you will have a folder called requirements. All requirement documents are in there. A folder called design. All design documents are there. A folder called planning, and all planning documents are there, so that anybody can access it. Okay, so that's one way of distributing or storing the documents. Then there is something called SharePoint. Okay, there is a tool called SharePoint. All those documents can be stored there and everybody can access it. Okay, then there is something called Wiki, which I'm going to show you because we use that at our job. So we are using something called Wiki. Wiki is just, again, we have a URL and we go to Wiki and we can access all the documents. On the left hand side, we have all the folders. Similar to a shared drive. So these are the softwares that companies use to store the documents that are being created. So far, there is no software. It's only documents, right? The software will be built in the development phase. Now, why are we learning SDLC, waterfall methodology? There are still some companies that use waterfall, okay? But majority of the companies are using Agile. Okay, we're going to spend much more time on Agile because that's where you're likely to work. But to understand Agile, you need to understand this. Then only, this is the traditional way of building software since the 80s. Okay, recently, about 9-10 years ago, it's not recent, Agile, a new process came in, and a lot of company teams are moving to Agile or have already moved to the Agile process. But it's entirely different. So we'll learn about Agile process also. Okay, so other questions? What is, okay, she's busy. Question for you.
Oh.
What does eliciting requirements mean?
What is that? Sorry?
Eliciting requirements, like a business analyst elicits requirements. What is gathering requirements? What is eliciting requirements? What is it?
Well, when you gather the information, probably you will get all down in details and give it out to the managers of each phase.
Distributes it to the team?
Yes.
No, but what is the difference between gathering and eliciting?
Right. Oh.
Huh?
Well, I forgot.
That's
the
fine,
one.
that's fine.
Can I?
Yeah.
Can I
You let her answer.
Me?
Yeah.
Gathering, it's what clients wants from the web application. He
Software.
tell to the business analyst.
Mhm.
But business analyst should he knows better than client and should ask
The right questions.
the right
Yeah,
question.
because client might not give all the information out clearly.
Yeah.
It depends on how knowledgeable the client is. If the client is very knowledgeable, they will give all the information out. But they might forget some information or miss some information. So business analyst is somebody who is, so what are the terms we use? We use a term called a person with domain knowledge. What does domain knowledge mean? We are building a bank website. So the business analyst has to have the domain knowledge of banking industry. Okay? Otherwise they cannot write the requirements. We also call the business analyst the subject matter expert or SME. Okay, what does SME stand for? SME is subject matter expert. These are just the terms we use in the IT industry. So a business analyst is a subject matter expert.
Both same position.
Huh?
Both same position, like the SME and the business analyst is same.
No. The position is called business analyst, but they are also called, anyone who has the knowledge is called a subject matter expert. So in this case, the business analyst is the subject matter expert. There could be other people who are subject matter experts also, and we'll talk about that. But business analyst is definitely an SME. There could be other SMEs also, but business analyst has the knowledge. So one thing you should know is what are the deliverables of each phase, what are the teams involved in each phase, what are their names, and what are their roles and responsibilities. Okay, that's what you need to know. And there are still companies that are using waterfall. Very few, but there are companies that are using waterfall. Otherwise, we would not even have this in the training. If nobody was using waterfall, we would just I would remove this from the training. Okay, this is where the actual software is built. Now, what are the tasks in the development phase? So the development manager has already distributed the tasks among the developers that you will build login. So one developer for login, 2 developers for accounts, 3 developers for money transfer, 3 developers for bill pay, the 4 functionalities. Now how does development, so we are not going to learn development in this training, but I'm going to give you a good concept that makes it very clear. Okay? Now how is development done? Okay, so let's say she's the developer for login, you are the developer for accounts, you 3 are for money transfer, you are for bill pay. How do you write code? Okay, let's say we are writing code in Java. Let's say the programming language is Java to build Bank of America. Now, very similar, when you create a file in Notepad, you write something and you save the Notepad, or you write something in Microsoft Word and you save it as a file. Everybody knows how to save a file?
Yeah.
As a notepad or as a Microsoft Word. Similarly, there are editors for developers, okay? And you will learn that editor when we do Selenium WebDriver, okay? What is an editor? Think of editor right now as a notepad, okay? It's a tool that the developers use to write code, okay? So think of it as a notepad right now, and then when you see it, you will know exactly what an editor is. So all these files are saved. So let's say she starts writing Java code, okay, and saves the file for the login functionality, okay, on day one. You are responsible for writing code for accounts functionality. So you understood the business requirements, you've understood the functional requirements, you reviewed the UI mockups, right? Because you've already gone through these phases. So everybody is clear that the BRD is reviewed with all the stakeholders, FRD is reviewed with all the stakeholders, UI mockups are reviewed with all the stakeholders. All documents, everybody has to review them. So the developers are very clear about what they need to build, okay? So when the developers write code, they use an editor called IDE. I can show it to you, but I don't want to confuse you right now. This is an editor, and we will all learn this when we do Selenium. So, yeah, I know that was the reaction. Oh my God, this is so easy that you will be able to
I
write
got
this.
excited.
Yeah. So, but don't worry about this right now. So it's like a notepad where you write code and you save a file, okay? Now, how does writing code into a file translate into a software, okay? So let me explain you the development process. And I have to do it a couple of times because it's new for you. It will take you time to understand, which is okay. So she's writing on day one of development phase starts. She starts writing code for accounts. They both, for login, they both start writing code for account functionality. These three developers start writing the code for money transfer. These three write for bill pay. When you're writing code, obviously you coordinate what functionality are you writing code for, okay? And you save the file like you would save any other file on your laptop or on your desktop, okay? Now, in addition to saving the file on your laptop, okay, at the end of the day, you have to upload that file into a tool called Git. Okay? Yeah. I'm going to show all this to you later on, but right now, understand the process. It should not be very difficult. So you are a developer, you start writing code in Java. Okay, first of all, as a software tester, you don't need to write code. You're not building the application. I'm talking about developers. Okay, so you are writing code for login. So you write code and you save the file. Okay, second day, you either create a new file or you continue writing in that file. So every day you are saving the code, each one of you. Now the end of the day, after you've written code, wherever you've reached, let's say by 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., you have to upload that file. That is not the right term. I will tell you the right term later on. I'm just making it easier for you. We use the term called check-in, but I don't want to talk about it right now because you will be so confused. So right now I'm using an easy term. Okay, I'm trying to explain it to you in layman terms first. Then we'll go technical. So you write code, you save the file on your laptop. End of the day, you upload the file into Git. What is Git? Git is a tool. What is a tool? Tool is, you get an URL that is given to you by your manager. You go to that website, you log in with your credentials, and you upload the file into the folder called login. So Git will have a folder called login, accounts, money transfer, and bill pay. So you write code. You know what folders are? Do you know what a folder is? No.
Oh, a login.
No. Do you know what a folder is?
Yeah.
Don't worry
Oh,
about
yeah,
Git
yeah,
or
yeah, I
login.
know
What
the
is a
main
folder?
folder, okay,
What is a
sorry.
folder?
It's like the books.
Huh? What is a folder?
It's a file that you save
Group
your.
similar items.
No. What is a folder?
You mean.
To
Huh?
group similar items together.
Folder has nothing to do with this. Folder has to do with your laptop. How do you create a folder on your laptop?
Right click new and then
Right
new folder.
New folder.
Exactly. So Git is a tool which has these folders already created.
Oh.
Okay, who creates it? The development manager will create it, or one of the developers will create it. Okay, so we have a folder. What is Git? It's a tool. Okay, we will learn so many tools in this class. We will learn test trail. You just go to the URL and you log in with your credentials, and you get into Git. As a QA, you will never need to use this, but you still need to know the process of how a software is built. So you will upload the code into login folder. You will upload the code into accounts. You will upload the code into money transfer and bill pay. So you'll keep writing code and keep at the end of the day upload the file into Git. Okay? So what is Git? Git is a tool where developers upload their code files. Okay? Where the code is stored. Alright? Yeah.
And would I be able to access whatever they upload or just mine?
Everything you'll be able to access.
Okay, I will see everything.
Everything. Okay? Now, once the code is uploaded, every evening at a decided time. So that's decided in the planning that developers usually work 9 to 5. So we'll give 2 hours buffer or 3 hours buffer at 8 p.m. every day. Okay? We will create a software program. Who's we? The development team. Development team will create a software program that will, this is a software program that will run automatically every day at 8 p.m. except the weekends. So one of the developers will write a software program that will run automatically at 8 p.m. every weekday. What will that program do? That program will go and pick up the latest file, latest and greatest files from these folders. Okay? Everybody understand what latest and greatest file means? So if you have a file on day 1, that is the only file, that is the latest and greatest. Tomorrow, you are continuing to write more code in the same file, so that file becomes the latest and greatest, right? For that day. So day 1, there'll only be one file, correct? Day 2, there could be still one file or there could be more files, okay? So it picks up the latest and greatest files and puts all those code files into a tool called Jenkins. Okay, so Git and Jenkins. What does Jenkins do? So Jenkins is another tool that creates the software build. Okay, what does that mean? So all this code will, now don't say this in your interview, okay? This is something I'm trying to tell you to explain it. Think of Jenkins as a smoothie maker, okay? You're putting all the fruit in there, okay? So think of code files as the fruit or vegetables, and Jenkins will process all that, all the code files, and give you a software build which is called BOA 1.exe on day 1. Okay? On day 2, has anybody ever seen an exe file?
No.
Have you ever installed any softwares on your laptop?
Yes.
What is the extension of the file usually?
Executive.
Exe file, right? So this is day 1 of development. So what are the 3 things involved? There is a tool called Git. There is a tool called Jenkins. Okay? And then there is a software program that is written. We call it a software program or a script. Okay? This software program runs at a designated time that the team decides, let's say 8 p.m. It will pick up the code that you have uploaded every day and move that code over to Jenkins. Jenkins will spit out a file called BOA 1.exe. Now, how did they come up with this name? This is configurable in this program. You can call it Bank of America 1.exe or B1.exe, whatever you want to name it. Same thing happens next day, you get BOA 2.exe. Third day, BOA 3.exe. So let's say you do development for the next 4 months. Okay? Every day you're writing code, building software. In 160 days, you get BOA 160.exe. This is when the development team says development completed. We have built the application, complete application. Okay? So this is the name we give this executable file is software build. Another term we use is code deployment. Okay. Now, yeah.
So this is
Automatically happening.
Okay, after
So
the
this
rest-
software program has to be written by a developer, and this program, all it does is runs at a designated time, 8 p.m. on weekdays, picks up whatever the latest files are. How does it find out latest? With a timestamp. When you create a folder and file, it has a timestamp. So when you upload a file, it will have the timestamp, which is the latest one. It picks up the latest and the greatest file, moves it to Jenkins. Jenkins will process these files and create a software build or an executable file. Okay?
So Jenkins is just a compiler.
It's just a compiler to create a software build. It does other things also, but that's the main, for software build purposes, that's what it is.
But it's
So Git is
auto-generated.
where the code is now. Why do you think, before I answer questions, I have to logically explain you. Why do we need this? Why can't the developers just save it on their laptops? Can somebody answer that?
Because you can read. It's for
No,
readable.
your laptop.
Because everything will be connected.
So
Can
there could be
remember?
20 developers. Instead of a program going to 20 developers' laptop, which is very difficult to write, first of all, you have to go to one place. Okay? That is reason number one.
Yeah.
Okay? Reason number two, what if your laptop crashes? You've been working for 4 months and your laptop crashes.
It's already saved on that.
Get
What happens to the code?
It's all gone.
Lose it, right? You don't want that. So you put it in Git, which is a central repository, and also there are backups being taken. Every day there is a backup being taken. So there are 2-3 copies of it already there. Okay? So this is the reason we use Git. Now there are other tools like Git. Why am I calling Git is the most popular? 90% of the companies are using Git right now. So this is the most popular tool. There are other tools that do that also. So Git is where all the files are uploaded. Okay, stores the file. It also maintains the version history of files. Let me explain you what, anybody knows what, or do you guys understand what a version history is? You create a Word document, okay? You call it version 1. You write more,
And that's a
and then you call it version 2. Then you add more things and you call it version 3, if you want to do it that way. So let's say the first day the file that you created was called login.java. Let's say that's the name of the file. You created today, right? Next day, if you work on the same file, you're not creating a new file, you will upload it, it will not overwrite that file. It will have login.java version 1, login.java version 2. Okay? Version 3 if you are using the same file. If you're using a new file, it will create a separate. Okay? Now, this program will only pick up the latest and greatest file. So version 3, not version 1 and 2. Okay? Because it is new code. Now, why do we need version 2 and version 1? If a developer realizes he has made a mistake, which he cannot fix, then you revert back to the previous version and start writing from there. Okay? So you made some mistake while writing the code and it's very difficult to fix it, so you want a clean start. So you go back to the
Previous version.
previous version. Yeah.
Is there any specific time of running this program, software program?
Yes, I told you the time. What time did I tell you?
8
8 p.m.
Oh, no, I mean like a time frame, like 2 hours, 3 hours.
So depending on how much code is there,
Okay.
how big is the application.
I see.
If it's a small application, maybe this program runs and finishes in 15 minutes. If
Okay.
it is a huge application, it might take 2-3 hours,
I see.
depending on how much code is there.
And to come up with a software build, how many days you would take? Is there
Every day.
every day? but
Every day you
is
build.
there is a maximum day for that or no? So does it?
No, what do you mean a maximum day? On the first day of development, you get BOA 1.exe.
Got it.
On second day, you get BOA 2. After 8 p.m., whatever time it takes, every night you will have
So let's say you
a latest build which will have more code.
Yeah.
So what is this executable? This contains all the code from day 1. This contains all the code from day 2, day 3, day 4, day 160.
So, but when you reach to one BOA 160, that will mean software build, right?
Each one of them is a software build.
Okay. So
That's a term
if
we
there is a
use.
size,
So software build is a term we use for the executable file that can be installed and it can be used as a software.
Is it, okay, it could take up to 6 months, right?
It will
doesn't-
take up to 6
Oh.
months. So you cannot give a client code files. Client doesn't know what to do with the code files, right? Client doesn't know how to read code. Client is looking for a functional software that they can use, right? So Bank of America, I'm the owner of I'm the IT department, you're the client. I can give you the code file, right? You say, what do I do with this? You need a working software, right? So this is a working software after it is installed. After it is installed, now this is an unfinished product. This is unfinished, this is unfinished, this is unfinished. This is not a finished product, this is only development completed. This is not ready to go to the client. The development team says, we have written all the code, we have built all the functionality that was in the requirements. We have built everything. We are done. Okay? Now it's the job of the testing team to test it and tell us if it is done or not. Now as a QA, one thing I did not mention because I wanted to mention at this time, as a QA be very clear as a software tester. You do not build an application, you do not write code, you test and you find bugs and you retest once those bugs are fixed. Okay? So you find a problem, you never fix the problem. You test if it has been fixed. Okay? So this is how a software is built. Okay? So you have, right? I gave you example of Java. Same applies if it's C++ code or JavaScript code. The developers write the code. Now they write it in editor. So every programming language. So the editor that we use, IDE, you can write any programming language in this. So they save those files. When we learn Selenium WebDriver, you'll understand how to do this. You save file on your local laptop or your desktop, and you also upload it into Git. But the right term is not upload. I said upload because you understand what upload is. It's called check-in. The term we use is check-in. So the developers will check in the code every evening after they are done. Now let's say a developer forgets to check in their code. What do you think will happen? Will the program stop?
No.
This is automated program. So let me, maybe this will make it clear. Let's say on day 2, the developers say we are not going to write any code. We have meetings or we have something else. We are not writing any code. No code got checked in on day 2. No code was checked in. This program will still run. It will still pick up the latest and greatest and create this. But the functionality is going to be the same. Nothing new was added. Okay?
So it's blank?
It's not blank. It has everything
It's
from
the same.
one.
Same.
From the first day. It's the same thing from the first day. Okay? So the day they don't check in code or they forget to check in code, the program doesn't know. Program only will pick up the latest and greatest file. So if they have not checked in anything, it will still pick up the one from the previous day. Now why do we do this? Why do the developers have this process? So one reason I've explained you that if their laptop desktop crashes, they lose the code.
Okay, it's very expensive code that you're paying a developer $80,000, $100,000 for working 4 months and everything is gone, right? The project itself gets stalled, so you don't want that. So that is one reason. It's a central repository. It's a central place for everybody's code. So tomorrow, a developer decides to quit or doesn't like the company, goes away, right? If it's on their laptop, they can delete it. You cannot delete the code anywhere. You don't have access to delete it. So you are a developer. You're the best developer. You don't get along with the project manager. You say, I'm quitting, okay? And we don't have your code here. You can easily delete everything and go home, right? But if it's in the Git, you can't delete it.
And each company has
Git or a tool similar to Git.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's another reason, okay?
And then-
Reason number 3, a new developer comes in, okay? They have access to your code. So you can not only check in, you can check out also the code. What does check out means? If a new developer comes in, they need to first understand your code, right? Then only they can continue. So they can check out the latest file, review it, and then start writing new code.
Why you check out?
To see what the earlier developer has written.
And who does
So that I
that-
can continue. How can you start writing code from midway without knowing what the developer has written before? That's why.
Let me ask you a question. On Git, whatever you store stays in. Is there any size to do, like, let's say whatever keeps the latest and the greatest?
It keeps everything. Git keeps version history of 100 files. So if your file is called accounts1, it will keep 100
But-
versions of it.
But does not delete anything. It does not say,
So,
oh, the folder is
so
full.
when
you
the
cannot
developers,
delete.
so if the developers are experienced and the manager has guided them right? For every code file, they will write comments. What functionality have they built? In words. Because code can only be read by a developer, right? Nobody else knows how to read the code. So they will write comments that this is what I worked on today. Okay? So that comment goes along with the code or the code file, right? So when a new developer comes in, they know exactly what this code is doing, right? So they check it out and then they start writing new code and they check it in. Why is the version history maintained? Okay? The version history is maintained for many reasons. One reason I've already told you, developer does some mess up. Okay, he writes code which breaks everything, doesn't work at all, right? So instead of fixing that, developer will say, okay, you know what? I'll just delete this or ignore this. Take the file from yesterday, check it out, and start all over again. Because I messed up the code today. So I'm not gonna try to fix it. I'm gonna restart from where I left off yesterday. So you have a version history, okay? Let's say later on, as a QA team, you find a defect, okay? So you have, actually, you know what, let's not talk about that. We'll talk about the testing because that will confuse you. So we'll talk about that when we do the testing part. So this is something that you need to know. You will not be doing this at all. But you need to know what, so in everything, this is what you need to know. What is a software build? They can ask you in the interview, what is a software build? A software build is a software that is installed. Now let me tell you another thing. Only in small companies or startups, you will need to actually install the software to start testing it. In big companies, they have processes where the Jenkins itself will install the code, okay? So he asked me, what is the other thing Jenkins can do? Jenkins you can either manually install this app. What do you mean by manually? You double click on this. Now, before we go there, where do you think these files are being stored? In a shared drive. Everybody knows what a shared drive is.
Yeah.
So there's a folder shared drive called build. So this program picks up the code, sends it to Jenkins, Jenkins processes it, and puts all these builds in a folder, okay, as files with a date stamp. So you know this is from which date, this is from which date, so you know which is, and keeps adding one number. So you know which is the latest. And you always use the latest and greatest, right? You don't want to go to the previous code. Now, question?
Yeah. So we said here the code is developed, right?
Here development is done.
Now the QA as a tester, do you test the code or do we test what is it? Is that the complete work that we test?
Yes. In waterfall, yes.
Okay.
Agile, no. But we are not talking about agile, so yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, what I was trying to tell you is, if the development team says, this is the final code, okay? If you're working in a very small company that has no money, they will tell you as a QA, please install it. You know how to install a software.
Yes.
And start testing it, okay? If you're working in a bigger company that has the money, has a good process in place, a program can be written for Jenkins where once this build comes, it automatically installs it.
I see.
Instead of manually installing it,
I see.
Jenkins has another functionality that can install or deploy. The right term we use is, the reason I'm using install is that's what you're used to. In IT, we use the term deploy code. Okay, so you understand the difference between a software build and deploying code. What is a software build? A software build is the executable file that Jenkins spits out, okay, which is a working software, which has all the code files behind it. You can't see it. You'll probably never see it. You click on it, it creates folders, and it becomes a software. It's an executable. That's a software build. Deploying code or code deployment is very similar to installation, what you know as installation, okay? Code deployment or deploying code, okay, means that this executable becomes a software. Manually, you'll have to click on it manually, but Jenkins can automatically install it for you or deploy it for you. Not install, but deploy it for you. So then hold on, let me finish, then I'll answer your question. So once the code is deployed, all this is happening in the background. So as a QA, you will not see any of this. Nothing at all. Okay, you don't see any of this. The development team tells you, okay, they send you a URL called don't send it to you again. They put it in a central location, like either a shared drive or SharePoint or Wiki. They put this URL and tell you start testing. So if you're a QA team, you will not see any of this happening. You will be told, we are done with development, go to this URL and start testing. That's all you will know. You will not even know this if you're working in a big company or a normal company. All this is behind the scenes. So for your testing, you go to this URL, okay? And you start executing your test cases, which we haven't talked about. So we're going to talk about in testing.
Two questions.
So
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Okay. When we come to test, we will see the codes.
No, you will not see the code.
We will see whatever they built.
You will only see whatever they have built.
The second question is, when they do start writing the codes, as we say, the designer or the architecture will decide what code. Would
Programming
they use,
language.
Yeah, would they use different Java or JavaScript or one?
Depends on what they've decided initially.
So they can use
1,
multi.
2, 3, 4, yeah, they can use multiple things.
Okay.
You don't care what they have used. You
Okay.
only care about the functionality.
Okay.
You're testing the functionality. That's what I was trying to tell you. You don't test the code.
No, I got you, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to know.
It could be multiple.
So QA has nothing to do with all this.
But job
His job is just to test the functionality.
Yes. So all this that I've explained to you is going to happen behind the scene.
Yeah.
So as a QA team, all you will be told is, this is the URL, okay? Go to that URL and start testing. And
So
if
in
you find a
job
bug, log it.
job interview.
This is all
Exactly.
They can ask you depending on how technical they want to be. Sometimes they'll ask you, sometimes they don't, but you should know it. You should know it. They might ask.
And we're supposed to be give us like test data, right?
No, test data you create. As a QA, you create.
Weird.
We'll come to that. We haven't talked about
Okay.
that. So, the terms that are important to remember, first you obviously need to understand this process, and I'll explain you one more time, all of it again. But the important terms here is, what does code deployment mean? Or deploying code. Code deploying or deployment of code means that the software build has been installed and you can access the application from this URL. Okay? So that's what it means.
And BOA1 is not
No.
The final.
Unfinished, the final one is that.
how it looks like. It's executable file.
You'll never see it. Developers will see it. It will look like half-baked code, half-baked functionality. That's what it will be, half-baked functionality. If you install BOA1.exe, which you will never have access to, but final, yeah.
Build is
Built is the final.
Yes. And you will not even see the final. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, yeah.
You are using the final, but the Jenkins will automatically install it or deploy it. So what you will see is this URL, and you will access this and you will start testing it. That's what you will see. Now, before we move to the testing phase, since we've talked about this URLs, I want to be very important concept, and they will always ask you this in the interview, okay? Now, if you see this URL, you see it says www.test.bankofamerica.com, okay? This is not the real Bank of America website, right? It is not gone live yet.
Yeah.
It's still in testing,
Mhm.
okay? So this is called test environment. What does a test environment mean? For you, a test environment should only mean this URL and accessing the website, but this code is deployed on a server, okay? On the cloud. Where do you think this got installed or deployed? Where do you think this build got deployed?
Cloud.
The cloud server.
When you install a software, where does it get installed?
Cloud.
No, when you install
your
a software,
computer.
on your laptop, right?
Laptop, yeah.
So there is a place where it gets installed.
Server?
So this got installed on the server, which is on the cloud, okay? So it got installed somewhere, and based on that installation, you are able to access the application, okay? Now, this is called test environment. Why do we call it test environment? Because the testing team is going to use this for testing, okay? Similar to this, we have a dev environment, which you have no business with, which is for the development team. So there will be a dev environment. It's not in the right sequence, but I'll write. You don't do testing here, okay? Who uses this? Developers might deploy the first one just to see how much functionality is working. So developers also do some testing, okay? Which they do it on their own, unit testing. So in the dev environment, the developers will install or deploy 1.exe. See how much functionality is built on day one. Then they'll do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just to see if they're making any progress. And they will test some functionality. So this is a dev environment which will have a different URL. Okay? This should actually go here. So dev is the first environment. Then you have the test environment. Okay? So that's why it's important to understand this concept. So let me put it the right sequence.
So what is the question they ask in an interview?
I'll tell you. Let me first explain you. So dev environment is a URL for Bank of America would be dev dot bankofamerica.com. Then you have test or QA environment. Test, doesn't matter, whatever they want to give it. Okay? So So question they will ask you is, what are the different types of environments in a software project? So dev environment is where the development team deploy code and do their testing, whatever they do. Okay, they deploy the code there and they do their own testing. As a QA, you do all your testing here. Okay? Alright? And then you have production environment. What is a production environment? You see the difference in the URL? This is what you use. This is what you use. So this is what the developers build the code in. This is where you test. After the testing is done, then you move the code here. So let me explain you and it will become very clear to you. So developers, they deploy each build here and do testing. They don't do testing, they just see how much of the application is built. They hardly do any testing. All they are deploying this code is to see how much is built on day 1, built on day 2, built on 3, as far as the functionality is concerned. Once they feel all the functionality is built, the final build is deployed in the QA environment and the QA team starts testing. When the QA team starts testing, over a period they will find bugs and they will log those bugs. The developers will fix those bugs. When they fix those bugs, okay, they will have to, so fixing of bugs and writing new code is the same thing as far as software build is concerned. So when you fix a bug, what does fixing a bug mean for a developer? They have to either edit the code, delete the code, or add the code. Then only a bug gets fixed. Every time a bug gets fixed, they have to check in new file, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The software program runs and you get another build, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That was again deployed automatically to the test environment. So you always have the latest and greatest code available for testing, okay? So you keep testing, you keep filing bugs, logging bugs, those bugs get fixed, you keep getting a newer build, okay? So let's say this is where development finished and testing started. Testing went on for 3 months. The final build with all the bugs fixed is BOA 250.exe, let's say. Okay? What is the difference between here and here? The testing started here. Lot of bugs were found. They were fixed.
And it came back.
And this became the final build with all the bugs fixed. Okay? And that is when the testing team says, testing completed. We are ready to go live. Hold on. I'll answer your question. And then this build gets deployed here. And this is what you use.
The final. So this
use
is the
the
final.
It's the final. So this is BOA 250.exe, but for the client, this becomes BOA version 1.0. You know, softwares have versions, version 1.0. So for the client, this is BOA 1.0, which has 4 functionalities only. Same process is done for version 2, version 3, version 4. So I know this is confusing, but I want, before you go today, you have to be clear about these 3 things. Tell me what's the confusion in the environment, because if you don't know this, you can't pass a QA interview. Yeah.
So, when, let's say first round, when we test and log bugs and we send it to the developers, they fix it. We have to do another test. We have to, and then here, if we find something, they fix it again and they send it.
Yes.
And then here, when we see if it's fixed, then we say. So basically, we give the final answer, and the developers has to release the product in this case, right? Because this
Yeah, we as a QA team say that our testing is completed,
Yeah.
and then the code gets deployed to the production environment.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Actually, it's confusing for me because I'm working with blood and this is different thing. So your question was what are the different type of environment?
Environments.
Yeah, can you please give me a short note for that?
Yeah, what are the different kinds of environments? There are 3 kinds of environments. Actually there are 4, but we will not talk about the 4th one right now. Right, we'll add that later. So there are 3 kind of environments. One is called the dev environment or the development environment. The second one is called the test or the QA environment. The third one is called production environment. Okay? So as a client, as a Bank of America account holder, you only see the production environment and that's what you use for your business. As a QA, you only test in the QA environment
The test environment.
or the test environment to find the bugs. And development environment is where the developers do the development and they install or deploy a code just to see how much have they built. On day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, how much the functionality has been built. Yes.
Yeah, but when the bug's gone and it's go from the third one, it can happen the bug again came.
It can happen. It can happen.
So it's test.
Bug will not
tester,
come automatically, it could have come due to some
default,
mistake.
yes,
Uh,
default.
It could be a tester's fault, it could be a developer's fault, it could be a fault in the code deployment. So bugs can be caused due to many reasons. Okay, reason number 1, developer didn't do good testing, missed a bug, didn't find one. That is one reason the bugs can come into production. Reason number 2, the developer did everything right. When the developer fixed the bug at the end, they broke code for a functionality that was working fine earlier. Okay, and then the QA did not run the regression test to check that, missed it. The third reason could be when the code deployment was happening, the script missed one of the files, code files. That is another reason.
I don't understand that.
So do you understand how a build is created by copying the code files into Jenkins?
Yeah.
So that script missed picking up, Jenkins did not process the files correctly and one of the files was missed.
Or it can happen by Jenkins too. Yeah.
A lot of reasons. It won't happen because of Jenkins because the way the software program was written was wrong. It did not take care of all the files.
During development, the process is going in a loop there, going around, and finally.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? Let me answer a question, then I'll come to that. I'll make it clear for you. So software program is written for these 4 folders. During development, the developers come up with, we have to create another folder called Money Transfer International. Because it makes sense to create that. Okay? The software program doesn't have this in there. The person who wrote the software program forgot to update it. Okay? So this functionality will never make it. That's the reason. Go ahead.
It's almost similar thing.
Yeah.
So during the requirement process, everything is done, BRD is created, they went to the planning, designing, everything come to the development process. We are going through the loop, they're checking everything, if there is an error within the development side, they test it and they confirm it, correct it, everything is come through Jenkins. Final product is done.
By the development team.
By the development team.
Yeah.
Now, this next process is gone to the testing team.
Yes.
So testers started testing all those things, their process is going on. At that time, the owner comes and says, I want to add that money transfer.
Yeah,
into
so
that."
that is called change in requirement. So how we handle that is, so depending on at which stage the client says, so business analyst can say we can do it. So first thing the business analyst can say is that we will do it in release 2. We are doing release 1 right now. We will add this functionality in release 2.
So you
But if the
continue.
client says, no, I want it in release 1. So you tell the client that this is how much it will cost. So the new functionality requirement is written by the BA. It is reviewed by each team. They come up with,
Start
yeah,
all
they
over.
come up with, start all over only for that functionality.
Okay.
That this is the effort involved, this is the time frame. So You tell the client this is how much more it will cost you, and this is how much more time it will take. And how development works is, if during the testing phase the client says that I want to take out 2 functionalities, then you tell them that it'll take 4 months more and will cost you another $1 million to take out the 2 functionalities. You say, why? I'm taking it out. You said, because you're turning it at the wrong time.
But there is a possibility of continuing that, finishing, and then recreate the next change order.
No, in waterfall, it depends on the client. Client says, this is very important functionality. I forgot to mention this. I need it in release 1. Then you say, that functionality, the same way the BRD gets updated, or a separate document is created. Okay? Whichever way. It is reviewed, tasks are created, how much effort will take to build that part, and that is told to the client that this is how much more time and more money it will cost. Are you okay with it? If he says yes, then you incorporate it. Client can keep saying it 100 times, you keep adding more stuff, whatever they want. But you try to explain them that let us do release 1 first, and if you can wait for release 2, let's wait for that. That is more efficient way of doing it. The client says, no problem. It will cost you more. We'll keep adding whatever you want.
So basically you stop doing what you were doing and then you go back and.
You don't stop. That goes in parallel. You continue to do what you're doing, but you add more code.
Functionality.
So let's say, it again depends. There's no one answer. There are 10 different answers. Depends at what stage the client says, I need to add this.
Like if
you are in the requirements phase, it has no impact.
Yeah.
Very less impact. I won't say no impact. Very less impact if you are writing if you are reviewing requirements, final, and the client says I missed something. Very less impact. If you're in the planning phase and the client says, again, less impact, but more than the requirements phase. If you're in design phase, again, the impact is not that bad, but it is more than what it would have been in requirements. If you're in development phase, it's a lot more impact. If you're in testing phase, it's a lot more. If you're in deployment, which we haven't talked about, it is more expensive. The later you change, now a requirement can not only be adding something new, it can be changing something that you have. Okay? So there are 3 ways requirements can change. Add a new functionality, delete a functionality, or change the existing functionality. All 3 have impact, so the term we use for this is changing requirement, or the right term is, it's called a change request coming from the client. So at what stage it is done, every team gets involved. They said this is the effort, this is the time, and it is sent back to the client, and the client decides. Initially, a smart business analyst usually tells the client, let's do it in release 2. If you can wait. If you cannot wait, this is the impact.
So let's say, I know it costs money, but let's say that you want to add one more thing here. This process, what we did in the beginning, it won't change. We just can't add.
Yeah, we can just
Do
add.
we have
So
to
a lot of things will change. So let's say it's a brand new functionality.
Yeah, but do we have
then
to
you will
have-
create another folder, and then the software program needs to be edited to capture the files from that folder.
Okay, but do we have to take whatever do we have to upload everything old and new? You know what I mean?
No, you don't have to. Just add the new.
But we just add to it and we run everything new.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying it depends on at what stage. There's no one answer I can give you. What impact it has based on which phase does the client says. So the answer that I give you for requirements phase is different for testing phase. When the client decides to do that and which phase of STLC we are is when the impact is different.
I have one more question. On the first day, the developer creates a file for example for login, and he check in on the first day. So there will be a file in Git, whatever you call it,
Git.
and then on your laptop or computer. Whatever.
Your laptop file doesn't mean anything once it's on the
That's
disk.
what
That's
it
where the build will be created.
So the second day, he or she is continuing what is on her computer, and that file is still there in Git.
Yeah.
So when does she check out on second day from Git, or she continues from?
Whatever way, either way is fine. If they know that they have the same file that they checked in, they don't need to check it out.
So there will be.
So if they know that they have not done any work, they come in the morning. Why do they need to check out? They have the same file that they checked out.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
But if they make a mistake during the day and they mess up that file and they're like, I can't fix this, then they just trash that file and check out the file from yesterday and start working all over again.
Okay.
If they mess it up.
So
Or they continue with that and check it in the evening.
So there will be a possibility of only one file in the person's computer, but Git will have
Multiple versions.
Multiple.
Yes. They can, if they want to do extra work, they can maintain it, but usually they don't. So they will have only one file, yes, and Git will maintain the version histories. Why? This is for tracking purposes. Let's say they have good developers and one developer doesn't know their job. Okay, he messes up. You know, one developer can mess up everybody's file also, right? They can overwrite code. So it maintains a version history, and it also, again, we are going into too much technical. You don't need to know it. This is development training now.
Security.
What I'm telling you is
Yeah,
not
that's
development
what I was
training.
saying.
Whatever
All we need to
change
do
is
is
made,
test.
you can see that change in Git. So let's say on line 20, she overwrote your code. You can go to Git and it'll say on line 20 in this file, this was overwritten by her at this time on this date.
So there is a
So you
security.
cannot say that I did not do it. Security. So let's say I am a developer. I can go and try to mess up the code. I'm just saying. Okay. It is all tracked, and you can do anything because whatever you mess up, you can always go back and retrieve what was working before. And
So
you
if
can
you-
undo the changes also.
So if it
at
is
every
one,
stage.
one functionality, there will be many files, many versions.
Depends how the developer wants to do it.
Correct.
How they've planned it. They can write all the code in one file, or they can create multiple files.
So if it is so many functionalities, there will be thousands of files.
Yeah. Yep, it's possible. If it's a huge application, there's a problem. But it's all automated, so
Still, Jenkins will retrieve only the latest and
we
greatest.
understand to the timestamp. So everybody has. Can I get my flash drive back? Has music that I listen to. Okay, so what we'll do is, so the problem is there are not very good instructions on YouTube to install the software. That's why I'm warning you. I'm going to send you videos. Try your best. If not, we'll install the software. That's number one. Number two, you don't have to wait for next week to start your homework. Nothing is due this weekend. Start writing or creating a document on SDLC waterfall. Whatever we have done, we've covered initiation, requirements, planning, design, and development. Okay, start writing, and we'll continue with testing, deployment, and then you can finish the other tasks. So assignment is to start writing a document on SDLC waterfall methodology in detail in your own words, and also install the softwares that I'm going to send you instructions for. Yes, you got this.
But where is it?
If you open your QA folder, and it is called QA course PowerPoint. QA course PowerPoint. Yeah, just put it in alphabetical order first. How you put it in alphabetical order? Okay, you click on the name.
Click on the top. Very
Oh,
View?
view.
Okay.
I see.
And then
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
QA course PowerPoint.
While you're there, can you bring the screen the syllabus, what we are studying, what you learn?
Where was it QA course? Is it this one?
QA first course.
Open that one. This one? Okay. This one?
We are going through waterfall right now, right? There are two different models of waterfall. Are we learning that or?
No, we only
So
learn
what
one
are the
model.
slides?
Only step down,
Yeah.
not the V model.
It's not popular. Even waterfall is not popular.
I know. you know, but V model, you have the processes going simultaneously.
Yes, we can cover that if you want, but I don't cover it. Because I spend more time on agile. More time needs to be spent on what you need.
Still, you have to convince a lot of companies to go for agile.
See, companies will not, it's, one second, it's called QA course.
No, but there is two. Do you remember you told us to copy paste this?
So
and
only
this is
QA folder you look. Every document is in the QA folder.
Okay.
And it's called QA course PowerPoint. That's right, the fourth. So it is difficult to convince because people have a shut mind, closed mind. They
Right.
don't want to listen.
Right.
They have used this process for the last 10 years. And somebody tells them, the first question they'll ask is, everything is working fine, why do we change it?
Exactly.
So what will you answer? So if you're trying to get agile in, and the company's been using waterfall for 10 years, everybody's used to that process, will say, why are you changing it? Is the process not working fine? I have been part of a team, I'll be honest, I've only used agile for the last 7 years. Before that, my career was all waterfall. So I was working for this company called Boxstone. They got bought over by a bigger company called Good Technology from California. So when Good took over, they said we're going to change the process, no more waterfall, agile. Okay? So everybody, including me, said, why do we need to change it? Okay, everything is working good, our company is doing well. They say, no, our process at Good is we have to do agile. So there's nothing we could do, they bought us over, right? Even our CEO can't say anything. So they sent agile coaches to train us, to teach us about agile. There were so many pushbacks, but the agile coach was very good. He had answer to every question.
Well, I
So
know.
somebody asked them the question that why should we change when things are working fine? Okay, so his answer was because when you change to agile, things will work better. How can you say things will not work better? You haven't tried it. Okay, so why don't you try it? And if it doesn't work, then you can revert back to waterfall. But we feel that it's going to be better if you do agile. That's the answer.
I have come across the companies who is doing smaller projects stick to waterfall.
That's why there is no logic, there is no rule whether you should follow waterfall or agile. Okay, there are pros and cons for each process. Okay, you cannot say Bank of America will work better if we do agile or if we do waterfall, or any other software will be built better if we do waterfall. Waterfall definitely is more organized, more detailed process. Agile is less detailed and a faster process. Okay, but there are a lot of disadvantages and advantages of both. What I have seen, and again this is not a rule, but what I have seen is government organizations are still using waterfall or slowly moving towards agile. But all private companies, small startups are all agile.
Which one has less defects?
Defects have nothing to do. Defect is based on how good the developers are and how how good they are. How organized are they? More than being good, how organized are they? How much do they communicate with each other and coordinate with each other? Because now, since you've understood this and we don't have time, so I won't go further. Let's stop here. But we'll talk more about. Now you will understand why there are bugs in the applications. So
what is the
I'll send you. Oh, before we go, sorry, one last thing. I forgot. I should have done this earlier. 5 minutes. I want to send an email to everyone, and please check if you have received it.
Oh, I
haven't even
created a
sent it
Gmail
yet.
account.
Did you send Gmail account?
I haven't sent to anybody yet. I'm going to send.
Oh.